My name is Gary Bontrager. I'm your host at Mindset Growth Podcast. I want to welcome you to another episode of Mindset Growth Podcast. We appreciate you tuning in and supporting our channel. It's folks like you that make this possible and that give us a lot of great ideas for things we should address, talk about, and help people through as we move through life together and really support each other. So with that, I'm going to dive into something that's maybe a bit of a hot topic or a buzz term in our society in the United States right now, and that is the term DOGE. I'm going to be doing this here to just kind of branch off of that a little bit, but as we think about it, it's a really hot issue that's going on in the country, and clearly we hear a lot of comments, positive or negative, it depends on your viewpoint, on what Elon Musk and his team are doing with DOGE. And for those of you that haven't paid any attention, all that really means is it's the Department of Government Efficiency. So what they're doing is going through different departments, just line item at a time, and they are just looking through what all the expenditures are, what are the efficiencies, and how is that benefiting maybe the American people. How does that help and better the country? Is it, adding to our success? Is it taking it away from that? And it's really just what it really comes down to is they're doing an audit. And when you do audits, sometimes some people are frustrated and upset. Others like it. And the biggest thing that a audit does is just creates accountability. So really what they are doing is creating accountability for the U.S. government and also giving transparency back to really the consumer, us as Americans in the country, to where are our tax dollars going and what's being spent. So that's just a breakdown of what they're doing. So I'm going to do a spin-off of that. And I would like for you to think about, and we'll use some different acronyms, but it's really going to be the same principle as DOGE. And so as you think about that, the first one really, we can just call it DOPE, Department of Personal Efficiency. And when we sit down and look at what they are doing at DOGE and whether we're excited for it or we're against it, if we want that same efficiency or maybe the same productivity and accountability, which a lot of times we do not want that. Personal nature is we are creatures of habit. Some of those develop from how we grew up. Some of those develop from over years of time and experiences that we've had to where how we protect ourselves or possibly how we like to just experience life in general. So we have habits that we really enjoy and like, and they don't always serve us very well. And so I'm going to break down some of these. I'm going to go through some different ways personally, and then we're going to switch over into work life, and we'll talk about that. And some of that on the work side is going to be maybe directed towards business owners, department managers, but if you listen, I think you're going to find ways that it will also benefit you as well. And so we'll get to that. Really the beginning of just, Department of Personal Efficiency is taking inventory of your life and understanding where you're at in life. And, one of the things that I know you've heard me talk about before, if you've heard me speak, if you've seen clips, I'm sure you've come across this, but I talk about telling ourselves the truth. And it seems like a lot of times we like to tell ourselves stories so we can justify the actions, the behaviors that either we have or the actions and behaviors of those that we accept from people around us. And the one thing we will do most commonly is lie to ourselves. And often, we may be taught just to be morally good and not to lie to others, which certainly I'm sure all parents have taught their children. But the issue that then comes down to is we can often stop that habit if we have it because we've made a decision that we want to hold ourselves to a higher moral standard and have a higher moral ground. So it's easy to call back Jim and say, hey, Jim, we were having a conversation and I feel like I misled you in this way. I apologize. That was not my intent. And as I thought about it, I want to be factual in my information, because we kind of have a little bit of an elevated view of those conversations. So it's easier to do in that regard. Now, the one that really gets to us, and I'm going to hit on this one a lot because, quite frankly, the reason this is so important to me is I've had to deal with this in my own life over and over and over again. To this day, I have to take a step back. I sometimes have to ask others for their perspectives. So I'm sure that I have the accountability and the right mindset to understand what it is, how I'm viewing a situation, and what I'm telling myself. Because so often the bullshit we tell ourselves is absolutely that. It's not how the whole situation is. It's not the perspective that other people carry. And simply, it may not even be accurate from what the situation really is. Now, there are reasons we do this. Clearly, it's usually from pain that we've experienced in life in the past. And none of us are wired to really love pain. It's something that we learn to maybe attack and to accept and to even desire at some point, because we understand that going through pain is obviously going to make us better people, because as we break ourselves down, we can build back stronger. If you have the right mindset, that is. I mean, it's something that really people who push themselves, I don't care if it's with physical exercise, mental health, things like that, as we break ourselves down and understand situations, we can build back stronger and be more effective and productive and have a healthier life in a lot of aspects. So, as you think about telling yourself the truth, so often what it comes back to is how we feel. It's not the factual truth of the situation. And the person we will lie to the most is absolutely ourselves. So I would just ask you, have that person in your life that you can go to. And if you don't have that person, find that person. And the thing I would challenge you there with is you might have more than one person. You may have multiple people depending on what aspect of life that it really is. The other thing I would say is don't just jump all in. I would say vet that person and build some trust so that you know they absolutely have your best interest in mind and are in a position that they want to see you have full success in your life. So there's a bit of a process to build that trust, to have that person that's going to hold you accountable, for you to make sure that you're looking at situations in your life that are accurate, that are factual, and that you're not lying to yourself and telling you something based off of emotion or feeling from things you have experienced in the past. So that's really one of the first things that you got to address if you're going to take inventory and basically doge, or in this case, dope your life. There's other ways then that we need to, we want to look at. I would challenge you from a diet perspective. There's obviously a lot of buzz about health. Some people look into it and really look at what they can do to improve their health. And we understand clearly America is probably the most unhealthy country in the entire world. And a lot of that is from the things that are in our food. And the thing that's so interesting to me, it doesn't just affect our physical health, it affects our mental health. And then as we get into a lower state of maybe physical health, it affects our mental health, and it keeps driving us into this cycle that keeps pulling us down and down. And so diet is very important. There are a lot of nutritional things out there a person can take to get maybe a higher level of clarity, but it's certainly, there's this thing called brain fog, and it's, when we get into the mental health side, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to get into all the things that you should be looking for, but I challenge you to do that. Start to really research and find out if there's starting to feel like there's memory loss, there's different things that are affecting you, maybe even your personal relationships, your work relationship. You need to write it down so that you don't forget to do it. Some of those things, what are those? Is it affected by food? Is it affected by circumstances, the things I'm drinking, sleep habits, screen time, things like that. So diet becomes a very important piece of a person's life. And if you're going to take inventory of it, I suggest that's a good place to start first and foremost. We know that that can make a big difference. The other side, then the health, and I kind of already alluded to it, the physical and the mental health. Studies show that as you physically do things and are active, not only will it break down your body and rebuild, which we've been talking about, but it'll rebuild the muscles and the cells in your body, but they need to be broken down so they can be rebuilt. But as they do, they also will provide better mental clarity and mental health. And a lot of it can be psychological, but it's really, and maybe I should say, really all of it can be psychological because it comes back to what we tell ourselves, what we feed our mind is what we're going to believe. So just think about your health in a different way. We talk about diet. Now we're talking about, some of your physical health. But your physical health is going to clearly be affected by diet, and it's going to be affected by exercise. It's going to be affected by the people you surround yourself with. So for some folks, a gym membership's important. They want to go in and they need that to where they can see other people that have really accomplished things. They might join a class 2-3 days a week just for accountability or hire a trainer. But all of those things make a difference for our mental health. And that's just an aspect of how the physical and the mental and emotional are all tied together. So I just challenge you to think about that. Take inventory of your life. Where are you at? You may need to change your food diet in order to help put yourself in a position to have the energy to go out and physically start to exercise and do some things differently. And the result of all of those, it's going to start to affect your mental and emotional health as well. It may be sometimes in an order of what you need to work on, may be the emotional health first, back to stop lying to yourself, tell yourself the truth, get a baseline of the facts, and find somebody to hold you accountable to work through taking that whole inventory of that piece of your life. The thing then that I want to move on to a little bit is relationships. And ultimately, the things we have talked about so far really come down to relationships. And, there's just a whole lot of different personality assessments. There are a lot of doctors, psychiatrists, different people that work in the world of relationships. And a lot of those things can be affected from a multitude of different things. I mean, we can sometimes break them down and coin easy phrases and say it's always this that affects, A affects B and B affects C. But it really is going to come back to the relationships that you have are going to make an entire difference on your future. They are the difference on your current life. And if you've been somebody who has clearly taken inventory and started to be intentional about your relationships, you are where you're at today, which is probably different than you were 10 and 5 years ago, because you've been intentional about your relationships. And it just takes, as you do this inventory, it takes some time, but you need to start to write out what it is that you want to accomplish out of life and what's important for you with these relationships. Because as you figure out what your importance is, you're going to figure out what your life is about and why you're on earth to even live this life and how you're planning to serve other people. So that inventory to take of our own lives is very important because of the importance that relationships can have. The thing that I like to talk to folks about a little bit here when it comes to relationships is simply this. We have personal relationships that we probably engage in, whether it's a significant other, a spouse, however that looks. Those are relationships we pursue. I can tell you from experience, some of those relationships we pursue at periods of our life, and in my case, in a position of insecurity, looking for security, which is not a healthy angle to come at it from, and it will usually cause problems down the road. Or we pursue those relationships from a healthy point of our lives, and we look at those, how they will help us if we invest in them to drive us forward and maybe even take us to another level to have yet a better and a healthier and a more fulfilling life than we have currently. And there are other variations in there. I'm not saying those are the only two options, but I'm talking a little bit from experience when I look at these. So when you look at those are some relationships that I know I've experienced in my life. Now, the ones that I have that I haven't necessarily, I shouldn't say I haven't chosen, but as you choose them, you don't know what you're going to get. And that's their relationship with your kids. And then as they move on through life, and let's say they have a significant other or get married and bring other people into their lives, I don't really choose those because that's something they need to do, and they need to figure out for themselves the importance of what it is and who they're going to spend their time with and how this person is going to help them maybe have the fulfillment in life that they want, and how they can also help that person have the fulfillment in life that they want. So those are the relationships then that are a little different, and we try to adapt to those and integrate those into our life. But we need to take inventory of all of those. If we come from a place in life where we've actually, like I had mentioned, pursued a relationship when I was insecure and I was looking for security and somebody to help me feel better about myself, as time goes on, that becomes very difficult. And sometimes you need to look at all those things and figure out, what do I need to change? Because a lot of times people will change with you if you work through this. Sometimes they won't. Sometimes paths go separate ways. But that is the important part. The important part for you is to figure out what it is for your baseline that you have been created for, and take that full inventory and then figure out how to integrate those relationships. The other thing that can happen sometimes out of this, find ourselves in situations that are extremely unhealthy. And if you're the type of person that's a peacekeeper, you're going to put a tremendous amount of energy in trying to keep people happy, trying to keep people together, and trying to make sure everything's functioning and going forward in a positive process the way that you want it to, or the way you envision that your life should be. And it comes a point you have to take inventory of that. And so when you come back and you go through this process of dope in your life, the one thing you really need to figure out is, before you go too far into it, is what are your goals at the end of this process, and what is the goal of what you're trying to achieve? Because if you don't understand exactly what you're trying to achieve, that's where you need to start. It's going to be difficult to go through and say, I need to make changes here. I need to set boundaries. I need to not tolerate this. I need to give more over here. But you really got to understand what's the end goal. And the thing I will also want you to think about is, just because you decide this is what I want to accomplish in the end, does not mean when you sit down today and do this, that 6 months from now, a year from now, you have to readjust because it looks a little different based off of the knowledge, the conversations, and the understanding you have. But the most important thing is that you understand the end goal. And I can tell you this unequivocally: you have to make sure that you are your best friend. That is the most important person you take care of. And this is why this topic is so important to me today. You have to be in love with yourself. It's a cliche thing to say. We hear it from multiple people. But if you don't love yourself and you don't believe in yourself, and you say you're living for your kids, and you want to make sure it's not about you, it's about them, I'm promising you, you will not be the parent, the brother, the sister, the mother, the father, and all the other titles we can give. You will not be the person to this other person in your life until you love yourself, you're proud of yourself, and you know you are number one and that you have to take care of yourself first in order to give what you have. Because when you're depleted, broken, you cannot give something to someone that you don't have. I've seen this more than once. And we can try, but until we have that fixed within ourselves, then we cannot give it away. A couple of things as you go through this process, it's important that you also love yourself through it, because it's a difficult process. The other thing that you need to think about is there are people in your life that are there and have supported you. And if you're feeling too broken to even give what you feel that person deserves in a relationship from you, the fact of the matter is sometimes you got to receive whatever it is they can give and not worry about what you can give back, because you need to be selfish and get yourself healthy in a place where you can actually be the person you really want to be and give to others. That is so, so key and so important. So as you go through doing maybe the DOPE, Department of Personal Efficiency, everything often comes back to relationships. I talked so far about personal relationships, but then it also flows over into business relationships. And I'll dive into that just a little bit as well. As we're doing that, there needs to be a balance. There needs to be a balance of relationships. And a lot of times your personal relationships and your work or business relationships will start to intermingle and intertwine, and you're going to start to have those be one and the same. The thing that I see a lot when I work with clients, as that happens, it also changes your business or personal relationship. And sometimes it can be very difficult to have both. And I said sometimes, because it obviously will change the dynamic of your relationship. So you have to think about, how does that look? You know, if a cousin goes to work for a cousin, and before they're just a cousin, now all of a sudden one is a boss or one is a coworker, and there's a different dynamic because there has to be different communication, there has to be accountability, different things are happening. So you have to adjust that relationship in order to have it be effective and productive, and where both people feel like they're benefiting and moving to a higher level of success, because both people have a good relationship and communication, and it can just help them elevate themselves as they go through that process. It's no different with personal relationships that are in families. I work with a lot of people where husbands and wives work together. I see a lot of very effective ways that that happens. And the thing that's so interesting is there's almost no way that they can separate sometimes their personal and business relationships. There's always seems to be guidelines where, hey, once we leave the office, it stays there, and vice versa. And that happens. And it's usually an effective way to do it. So you're not just always talking about work and you're losing the focus of what it is that's important back to your personal relationship. Because there are a lot of personal relationships then that, because they see each other at work, they lose sight of, you know what, we do need a date night once a week. And it doesn't just happen because of work. It can happen because of kids. It can happen because of kids' activities when they get into school and have all these other activities. But it comes back to, as you find what's important to you, you really need to outline how this looks and how you're going to have these relationships mold together and stay important and keep the first thing first. Single people out there, a lot of times you come home and there's an empty house. That's a whole different way of looking at it. But we as humans are designed to have connection. So even there again, it's just another aspect as you're looking at your relationships. It's important, you know, if you don't have a significant other in your life, you still need to have some interaction with other people. Are you setting up to where there's a, game night? Is there friends that you hang out with on a regular basis. So those are just things to think about as you find a balance in that. So as you listen to this, think of how can I balance my life, take inventory of it, and cut things out that are not serving me to be the person I want to be, and then take the things that are, and let's figure out how to escalate that and be more effective and help us, have a better life, stronger physically, mentally, emotionally, and really probably be the productive person in society that we want to be. Another thing that I like to talk about with people a lot of times is simply this. There needs to be a balance of those relationships. Unfortunately, some of us lose parents at a young age. Others have them till, later into life. And some of us, it's a mixture. We may lose one when we're young and we may have another. We may have parents that have been divorced, and we have to figure out how to balance those relationships. But that's back to the personal relationship. One thing I want to challenge all of you with, and I started doing this at least 35 years ago, that has served to be extremely beneficial in my life. And when we talk about balance with relationships and our personal life, certainly, from the things I've said, you can draw that there are really close friends, then maybe another level of friends, and we kind of have different groups of people, and we can categorize those, 1 to 3, 1 to 5, family members, etc. But there's one group I would challenge you to add to your life. There are people in the United States, and I'm sure if you're in another country, I know they're in your country as well, that are elderly or have just lost all their family. Or for whatever reason, the relationship with their family is broken, because I've seen all of those scenarios. And if you can take some time and invest into a relationship with that person, if they've been broken, if their relationship with their family is broken, take some time to invest into that relationship so that they feel what family should be. Now, it's going to involve more than you, especially if you have a significant other, a spouse, or kids, because this person or these people will show up at family get-togethers. And sometimes it may be somebody who's, let's say, in a nursing home. They really have no family, or they have a son or a daughter and their kids are all gone and 800 miles from where they live and nobody comes visit them. If you walk into a nursing home or an elderly care facility, I'm sure they can help you connect with somebody who is just very lonely and has no one to talk to. And you can set up to where on a weekly basis, bi-weekly basis, you're going in to visit with these people. You're establishing and building a connection with somebody who's lonely. And the only thing you can do is give. There's nothing much you can expect to receive. But if you can set that up and integrate that into your life, I will promise you this, because I can tell you this from experience. You will absolutely receive far more than you can give. Yes, it takes time. It takes effort. It's going to cut into your schedule. It's going to affect your daily life. You're going to get phone calls. You're going to have to get up late maybe and go see them when nobody else is there to help them. But I promise you, it will be extremely rewarding. It's something I have done with an elderly couple for at least 35, maybe 40 years. And it's one of the most rewarding things I've done. In fact, it's become so much a part of my life that my kids joke about it. And they love it because now these people become grandparents to them. And they talk about, they call them by name and they're grandparents because it's included them into our life. So what really has happened is, a lot of times we talk about family being blood, but the fact of the matter is blood just makes you related. Family are the people that are there for you and care for you and support you and cheer you on. They're the ones that are there for you even when you screwed up and you're feeling down and broken, but they're the only ones there that are going to help you move forward and get back on top and get your confidence back, get your physical abilities back, whether you broke a leg, whatever. They're going to be there to support you. And it's not because they're getting something back in return. It's because that connection of family. So as I wrap this up, I want you to think about really, as you dope your life, think about those relationships and start to write those down and figure out how it is that you're going to put importance on those relationships, and then write out steps or seek out assistance. And you can get a hold of me. I do this with folks all the time. You need to then figure out what it is that's important to you and how you're going to manage those relationships so you can have the fulfillment and move forward in a healthy manner and have the life that it is that you want. And here's something I'm just going to share. It's a lot more important when we get to the end of our life to have significance than it ever is to just be liked. So as we build this out in our own personal life, think about how is it that I can leave a legacy of significance, make the lives of other people better by how I take inventory and conduct my life, how I, as an example, live my life. There are people that you have to cut out. And if you go through this process, you certainly will cut people out of your life. And those will be some of the most empowering things you can ever do. Because you have to not only hold yourself to a high standard, if you want to take yourself to a healthy level, you have to hold those around you to a high standard. And you have to manage those relationships. I talk about different levels. Well, this is where the levels come in. And you need to really be intentional about that so that you can serve others and serve this world and serve your God in the way that you were created to do that. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Mindset Growth Podcast.